Hey, it's Lynn with Cotton Art Studio. I just wanted to start the new year and talking about why I want to quilt and what I want to quilt and all the things about quilting. So if you're into quilting, want to be into quilting, and want to learn things about quilting, join me at Cotton Art Studio and we can talk about quilting. So for this, I wanted to give you 5 things, because everybody does numbers, so I guess I'm doing numbers. So I wanted to give you 5 things if you want to start quilting, what my tips would be to do that. And the first tip would be find a local quilt store or online. And this isn't self-promotion, but I have some of these online available. But find a local quilt store someplace online where you can take either a block of the month club or a beginner club or class. And the reason I say this is because 9 times out of 10, especially a beginner class, they're going to teach you really good techniques. And the techniques is really what is going to propel you forward. So try to find some place that's, you like the design of the quilt, or sometimes they're mysteries, so that's kind of hard to tell, but you want to learn the basics. You want to learn the basics how to cut, you want to learn the basics how to press, and you want to learn the basics how to sew together, because that's going to get you to be very successful down the line, and you're not going to be unlearning techniques that are out there. So there are some techniques that are out there that are like not necessarily strong beginner foundational stuff that you want to learn. So that's my first one. Join a block of the month or a beginner class. Second one, I see a ton of quilters or people come in a quilt store, and I've worked at some quilt stores, so I've seen this multiple times. People are just new or they're just starting, and they walk into a quilt store and they're like overwhelmed with the choice of fabrics. And even as a seasoned quilter, I get that. Like, there are new lines that come out every 4 months, and there's multiple fabric manufacturers. I mean, and the taste range so huge, from very modern aesthetic to a, nostalgic aesthetic to historical or traditional, what they would call traditional quilts or quilting. And those can be in anything. I mean, in any color now. If you like solids, they can be solids. If you like batiks, which are like a dyed kind of mottled type of fabric, that can be there. So like that can be very overwhelming. And what I think is intimidating by that is, like, you are spending a lot of money for this fabric. And I do think it's funny, the first thing you do is cut it up. So we've bought all this really nice fabric and we've cut it up. And I think the fear of new quilters or people who are just starting out, I think part of the fear is that, is this going to look good together? Like, is it going to turn out? Like, do I trust my fabric picking ability? And I will say, there are some people who walk in quilt stores and they know what they want and they get it and that's good. I'm one of those people. I can envision what that quilt is going to look like in my head, but I've been doing this for a while. So, like, take that as a grain of salt. So if you're brand new and you haven't done that kind of thing yet, buy a kit. Like, seriously, quilt stores are awesome at getting fabric in, putting it together in a kit, and sometimes it's by the same manufacturer, and it's from this specific line of fabric that all goes together because the designer created it to all go together. So, if you're just starting out and your fear is that, oh my gosh, this isn't going to look good when I do to it what I do to it, when I make this thing, I still want it to look good. Buy a kit. Buy a pre-packaged kit, and that way that it's going to all look good. Now, there are other ways to do that, not just buy a kit. You can buy what they call jelly rolls or layer cakes, and these are, again, little bits of fabric. Jelly rolls is 2.5-inch strips layer cake are 10-inch squares. And those are going to be like all from the same line of fabric. So you already know that they all go together. So buy a kit. So 1, join a block of the month or a beginning class. 2, buy a kit. 3, and this one is going to bug some of you, like, because I think for me, it was hard to do, but I found it so useful. And one of the things you want to do is you want to repeat the process more than once. So let's say you join a block of the month club, right? And they teach you how to do this block this month, right? So, and you do it. Do it again. Like, do it at least one more time. And the way to do that is you buy a kit or you join the block of the month club. They're going to give you the fabric that you're going to need to make that block, right? Or have you purchased the fabric that you're going to need to make one block. So what you're going to do to do it again is you're going to go and you're going to buy, 5 fat quarters that are in the same kind of look or the same colors that they already use. But it's different fabric. And then you're going to cut that up and you're going to repeat that block. Or buy 2 kits of the block of the month. A lot of times they're not super expensive if it's a block of the month thing. Buy 2 kits. But repeat the fabric and repeat the process. And the reason I say that is, let's say this block has 4 half square triangles in it. Well, you're going to do it 4 times for one block, but if you do the block again, you're going to do it 8 times. And I promise you, the difference between the first one and the 8th one will be marked. Because you will see that, okay, if I do this, or if I pay more close attention to the, 1/4-inch seam, or it's going to be a better process, and it's going to get that down. The repetitiveness, and that's a lot about quilting anyway. It's just the repetitiveness allows you to get that learned technique into your muscle memory, into your mind. And it's just, it's like when we were kids, when you learned stuff, you had to memorize it and repeat it back. And I remember we had to, I was in plays and stuff. So you had to memorize the lines. You had to practice. You had to practice before it goes out. So this was one of the things that I did when I first learned, is I joined the block of the month club. Every month I went to this quilt store. I learned how to do a block, and they were smart because they were selling stuff to us, but they had fat quarters for another quilt look like, let's say they did, the original one was in traditional fabrics. Then they had fat quarters that were in all Americana kind of stuff. So red, white, and blue. And so they would give you the instructions and you would do it out of their small bits of fabric to make the one block. But then you would buy the 4 or 5 fat quarters that I needed to make the secondary block for me. And their promotion was, 1, it was selling you more stuff. So it was upselling. So I get that. But their promotion is too, that you're making a second quilt, right? So you're essentially making 2 quilts by repeating the process. So I really think that it's a great tip in that when you're learning how to do this for the first time, you make it twice. You do it twice. So you're learning about it from the block of the month or the kit, and then just make it again. So practice. And that can be inexpensive fabric. You're not having to, go to, one of the big box stores and buy, a stack of fat quarters. And those are the ones that you make the blocks out of. So, just repeat the process. So that's number 3. Number 4, start learning techniques, that you can build on. So, like when I teach a beginner class, I always start with, this is how you cut fabric. And I want you to cut fabric and not your hand. That's important. Cut the fabric and not your hand, because that's going to give you definitely a skill set to protect your hands. As well as, this is how you press, or this is how you measure to cut, or this is how you sew a 1/4-inch seams. And there's lots of tips and techniques out there that are going to show you, here's a guide that you can use, or here's those kinds of things. So start learning techniques. I know that a lot of times we get caught up in what the quilt's going to look like at the end. And I don't want you to forget the small processes of the journey to get there, because those processes of the journey to get there is going to make you a more accomplished quilter. And I am the worst at this. So let me just say this right away. I am the worst at this. Like, so do what I say, not what I do. Double wedding ring quilts are super hard, right? So I have found that when, you know, friends and family, 9 times out of 10, they only know double wedding ring quilts. And so somebody's getting married and they go, oh, I know you're a quilter. Can you make me a double wedding ring? And you're like, ooh, that's more than what I can do. So don't put pressure on yourself to, you know, go beyond where you are. Go the next step, but jumping to the hardest thing in the library of quilting stuff it can be difficult. So just realize, and I don't want you to fail so fast that you never want to do this again, because you'll get frustrated in the whole process of not wanting to do it again. So start learning techniques. That's the key. And then you're going to be able to go further with that. And then number 5 tip is no pressure. No pressure. Like, I teach classes, and sometimes I see people get so tense of, hey, you have to do this right, and there's a right way. I'm like, yeah, but this is your hobby, and we want you to have fun doing it. So let's not, you know, get so wrapped up in this that you forget that you're having fun doing this. So yeah, don't give yourself pressure. And you know, sometimes people put pressure on you. Oh, you have to have this baby quilt before they're done, or before the baby's born or whatever. You're like, no, I don't. It took you 9 months to get ready for this. I get 9 months, you know. Same thing with weddings, you know, give yourself grace. Like, if I get it to you before your first anniversary, good job. You know, so just wanted to, so no pressure. Don't put pressure on yourself. Don't put pressure on yourself on, you know, giving that kind of, getting something out the door or whatever. And don't be, and along with don't pressure, I'm going to add a second one. Along with don't pressure, don't be too hard on yourself. Like, don't judge your work with your first work. I mean, I'll be honest with you. If you saw my first quilt, my very first quilt, it's very beginner. It's a log cabin quilt, which is just straight line. It doesn't have a lot of, it's all the same color. So like, it's a tried and true pattern. It's really simple piecing, you know, the cutting is pretty simple as well. So, but that's a successful quilt. So don't be too hard on yourself. Now, would I make that quilt again? No, I wouldn't, because I have different aesthetics now. I've done this enough that I know what I want to do, that kind of thing. So definitely don't put pressure on yourself, and don't judge yourself too hard. This is your first one, you know, get started. Just have a good time doing it. Join a Block of the Month club. Take it in little chunks. You know, quilts are like elephants. I mean, when they say how to eat an elephant, it's one bite at a time. Quilts are like that. I mean, you know, if you start out and say, well, my first quilt is a king-size quilt, know that this is going to take time, because it will definitely, there's a lot of steps to the process. So it's not just a quick, I can bake a cake in an hour, you know. No, you're not going to do that. Now there's tons of books out there that say, you know, quilt in a day. There was a famous quilter who's still around, Eleanor Burns, and she wrote all these books, Quilt in a Day. And, you know, but that's an entire day. That's not just, and that's all you're doing. You're not breaking for lunch. You're not, you know, if you're going to do that quilt in a day technique, it's definitely an entire day. So just take your time with it. Remember, it's one bite at a time, and have fun. That's what you need to do. So I'm going to start putting these out. I don't know. hopefully weekly. That's my idea. And we're going to get together and do some sew-ins and stuff together. And I'm still working all that out, so hold on. But I just wanted to give you the 5 things that you may need to know to start quilting. So join me on Cotton Art Studio, and we'll talk to you later.